Fishing is an important part of my family history. My great-grandfather fished for a living on the Baltic Sea out of Torso, Sweden. My grandfather also fished as a young man in the Baltic. He learned to carve implements, make nets, and how to handle a boat. Fishing was hard on the Baltic, and in his late teens he went to his mother and said, "I have two choices. I can either go to fish on the North Sea, or I can go to America. I will do what you wish." She told him to go to America. She had seen too many families lose men to the sea. "Just come back and see us after 5 years." That's exactly what he did. In America, he worked in the same steel fabricating shop for 50 years, but he never lost his love of fishing. The picture shows 3 generations of Johnsons, some say 3 generations of Noses, with a good catch of walleye, pickerel to the natives. My grandmother had made her way down to the dock to approve of the catch. In the very beginning, walleye quickly became the preferred fish for A. Rene meals. Here you see Dad and Mike, my childhood friend, with another fine catch. This is 1953. When we first visited Fritjof and Ruth Ander in 1950, Dad had been fishing panfish on a small Minnesota lake. I will never forget my first fishing trip on Lake of the Woods. Fritjof took Dad and me down to Heaps Point. Dad had his own pole and caught a few. The deal for me was Fritjof would hook them and I would reel them in. I was a busy lad indeed, until Fritjof said, "Oh, David, I think your dad better take this one." It was a 6-7 pound walleye. We have a small black and white picture of the 3 of us with the catch. I swear Dad's eyes were glazed over. Particularly at $45 an acre, this was the place for him. Most all who come to A. Rene are involved with fish, if not the fishing itself. Anne, pictured here with a good catch, said on one of her first trips to the lake that she would take a book and read while I fished. The first time out I caught a couple very quickly, and she said, "Can I do that?" I was delighted, but little did I know how good she would become, almost instantaneously. Anne's mom, Kay, was with us at the lake a number of years. She didn't fish, but insisted on having her picture taken with a good stringerful. I don't think Berna took fishing quite as seriously as her menfolk, but she did fish occasionally, and certainly cooked her fair share. Always cause for a picture, or even better the naming of a fishing hole, was the occasional big fish. Here you see my dad Harry with his first big one, a 10-pound walleye. This was caught on an outing exploring new hotspots. Since most of the islands in Lake of the Woods are unnamed, an unnamed hole where someone caught a big one acquired that person's name. Hence there is a Harry's Island. We seldom got back there as it's just too far down the lake. Auntie Ruth got into the act with a nice 7-pounder that was grabbed by Fritjof as it came over the side. I believe she dried the head and had it for many years. My turn came with an 8-pound walleye caught out at Slate. The photo was taken at Mrs. Maisie's, who had an ice house where we often stored fish that we did not want to clean right away. It kind of looks like I was on my way to church, and such was the case. The only part of the outfit that is my fishing garb is the hat. I dubbed the hat Old Swen. What is left of it still hangs in our cabin today. A college friend, Lee Lindquist, and I, while cleaning the dorms during Christmas break, hatched a plan for a canoe trip. Unfortunately, the fire danger was high and our planned trip was not possible. We did go to Mr. Rimstead's camp on Whitefish Lake, where the walleyes ran larger. Another big walleye. Notice that Old Swen has been through the wars. He looks a lot better there than he does today, but then I look a bit different too. At this point, you probably believe that all we fish for at A. Rene is walleye. Lake of the Woods has many other species of fish. We occasionally catch northerns, perch, smallmouth bass, and rock bass. What you see here is a smallmouth bass guarding her nest right in front of the guest house. My brother-in-law, Rich, has a fierce independent streak and actually spends a good deal of time fishing for bass. One of the most sought-after prizes of any fisherman is the muskie, a sample of which you see here. They grow very large, are relatively scarce, and don't bite very often. I was keen to catch one, but knew little of how to go about it. On a family visit to Florence and Halvor Johnson's fishing camp to see the Anders who had rented a cottage there, I questioned Florence about where I might find a muskie. I knew she was a good one to ask because she was of the Bushy clan based in French Portage. This was an extended Metis family who lived in that area, which was a famous muskie place. I also knew that French Narrows, the area in which their camp was located, was also a very good muskie area. Florence said I should try a little reedy reef with about a foot of water over it. Since visiting was not my forte, I took the handy boy, along with a rod and reel that Auntie Ruth had snagged off the bottom of the lake while fishing, attached a mud puppy lure which was constructed to separate from the hooks when you got a fish, and went over to the reef. All I really wanted to do was to at least see a muskie, so I floated the handy boy on top of the reef and cast my lure out toward deeper water, between the reef and a small island. On one cast, the surface exploded around my plug. It was a muskie. The mud puppy was loose and the fish hooked. I don't remember how long the fight took, but eventually the fish came up on the reef. The leader had wrapped around his gill covers, which calmed him enough so that I was able to put both hands around his gills and lift him over the side of the boat and stash him under the deck of the handy boy. I retrieved the mud puppy and started back, whooping and hollering all the way. All that noise attracted everyone's attention, with everybody hurrying down to the docks. The muskie was still creating quite a commotion under the deck, and remembering the set of teeth he had, I was trying to figure a way to get him out. Florence took care of that. She grabbed the steering tiller from their boat and whacked him over the head a couple of times. I had my muskie, the one you see in the picture. We took the fish to town to weigh it and get some ice. Dad made the coffin you see. It was a 4-foot-long fish and weighed 30 pounds. The record muskie is around 70 pounds, so we're nowhere near that, but it was a very nice fish. The biggest I have ever landed in Lake of the Woods. Of course, we took numerous pictures. You must remember that I was quite young at the time and thought it was incumbent upon me to look at least as tough as the fish, hence the toothpick and the scowl. We eventually cut the fish into steaks, a lot like the salmon steaks you get at a fish market, and gave a number to friends and neighbors. I can't say it was my favorite tasting fish by any means. I dried the head on a tree for several weeks with insects helping. I then mounted it on a hunk of birch log and varnished it. Although there was a slight aroma with it, I kept it in my dorm room at the University of Illinois. I am sure it was one of the things that attracted Anne to me. After our marriage, it lived in the basement wing of our apartment. When we left the University of Illinois, we left it in the garage and the attic in Rock Island. Although they did not know it at the time, the people who purchased the house in Rock Island got a muskie head in the deal. Once you have one, of course, you want another. I fished a number of other spots that summer and actually hooked what seemed like an even bigger one. I got it up to the side of the boat, and it opened its mouth and spit out the hook. I was so mad I about stomped a hole in the bottom of the fisherman. We fish very seldom for muskie now, but there is always the possibility you will hook one at any time. I did catch a small 4 to 5 pounder a couple years ago while fishing for bass with Rich. So ends the saga of fish at A. Rene. Rich is the one who now takes his fishing seriously. We still remember the old spots, and every once in a while go out and catch a meal of delicious walleye.
After the summer of 2009, the fishing show needs an addendum. Rich purchased a fish finder. Not only does this device have maps which help with getting around the lake, but it also gives us a lot of data on the lake bottom. I have known for quite some time that there is a fairly shallow reef located halfway between A. Rene and Balancing Rock, but I've never had much luck fishing there. With the help of the fish finder, that changed in the summer of 2009. We call the reef the Great George. You can see its location on the satellite view. With the fish finder, it's pretty easy to find the top of the hump. I throw out the marker buoy at that spot. It's the orange dot in the picture. During the day, the fish are not right on top of the reef, but I found them in about 20 feet of water. This catch is from the Great George. It took about a half hour, which is about the time it required to gather tackle, bait, gas, and get going, and also about the time it takes to fillet the fish and clean up afterwards. The bait I used was worms, and I was trolling. I also frequently catch perch on the George. More than a meal for the two of us. If purchased in town, walleye goes at $8 to $10 per pound. Fried in just a little bit of butter, the fillets make the cornerstone for an exceptional meal. I should add that although walleye remains our favorite, we also ate and enjoyed bass, perch, and northern pike this past summer. Our little Swedish pressurized smoker got more use. A bit of smoked fish on a cracker is indeed a treat. With this picture of the final product, quotes, we will close again. I can't wait to have more reasons for another update.